I grew up in a lower middle class family. I have an older brother, and it's interesting that we both grew up in the same household, and yet we ended up on two very different tracks. He wanted to get everything he was unable to get as a kid, and I took the other path where I was happy having very little. I had a great childhood, and I didn't want the same stresses that my parents had with money. And so I just became a natural saver. It started super early. When I would go trick-or-treating on Halloween, I'd come home with all my candy. My brother would eat all of his in the first day or two, and I'd have a piece or two a day so that I had enough candy to carry me over to the next Halloween.
The tortoise remained steadfast in his approach, quietly persevering toward his own financial freedom. With focused determination, he continued to execute his well-crafted strategy, undisturbed by the ebbs and flows of the market. For the tortoise, the journey was not about catching up to the hare, but rather about forging his own path and catching up to Phi. As fate would have it, a couple years later, the stock market faltered, causing the tortoise and the hare to fall back a bit. Yet their responses to the crisis couldn't have been more different. While the tortoise maintained his unwavering course, seizing the opportunity to capitalize on market downturns by increasing his investments, the hare succumbed to panic and fear.
The Odd Duckling stumbled upon an intriguing internet story about a married duck couple who, through disciplined saving, retired early to travel the globe, enjoying curry and crackers. This revelation opened the floodgates and led to a discovery of a duck with a mustache who is a dedicated saver like her. Suddenly, she started thinking maybe she wasn't that odd after all. She had to find out how these ducks got to where they were. She delved deeper into research, uncovering a duck who had penned an entire book outlining the simple path to achieving financial dreams. Encouraged by this knowledge, she yearned to connect with these like-minded ducks.
Welcome to Catching Up to Phi, a podcast on mindset, money, and life for late starters of any age on their journey to financial independence. I'm Bill, and I'm a late starter.
I'm Jackie, and I'm also a late starter, and we're your host. We're here to help you on your journey to financial independence, no matter where you're starting.
We're going to talk to experts, other late starters, and explore topics related to our mission.
Join us as we catch up to Phi together.
Hello, and welcome back to Catching Up to Phi. It's spring outside. The folks had snow in the northern realms of Tennessee. It's 80 degrees and sunny. We are so happy to have spring. Jackie, how are you doing today, my spring chicken?
I'm doing great. I got my Masters shirt. Growing up down south, Augusta, Georgia, the big thing was golf, and the Masters was the biggest thing. I think they're still the most prestigious golf tournament in the world. People know it. But anyway, I didn't realize that when I was in high school and college. I was just trying to get through. But that's what spring means to me. But also it means tax day. And I know you're on it, Bill. You got your taxes all done. Well, we're recording this on April the 14th, the day before tax day. And I still don't have my taxes done yet.
I did those a month ago. I got to be a little organized, and I have somebody to do them for me. So you're doing them yourself, and you're finding all these little details down to your mileage. And being a do-it-yourselfer is important, but that's not me. I was traumatized by taxes from my dad who got audited. So it's never been anything I was really interested in. But maybe as I get interested in educating myself a little more as I move towards retirement and maybe doing this CFP thing, I'll learn more about taxes late in life.
To me, it's just another phase of your life. You can call it late, but you got like decades and decades to go. But I do learn so much when I do my own taxes. I thought that once I had the tiny little business that I have, that I would turn that over to someone else. But no, I love finding these deductions, and I just learned so much. And speaking of taxes, this past weekend, I did a great session. Let me give a shout out to the We Women Collective, which is an awesome Facebook group, but they met at Economy. And they get together once a month, maybe even more often, and they talk about a financial topic. And the topic that I worked with them on as a facilitator was on taxes, like what every woman should know and consider about taxes as they go into retirement. So oddly enough, taxes is one of my favorite topics when it comes to personal finance.
Well, as always, Jackie and I are a little bit different. We come from different angles. We agree on most things, but where we disagree, that's the color, right? That's where the magic happens. Okay, Jackie, we got to dive into the show because our audience wants to hear from these folks. First, Paul and Amanda, we wanted to give a shout out to the charity you've chosen. And before we introduce you, maybe Amanda, you want to tell us about who you support and who you want our audience to support?
We want to support Freedom for Fido. It is a charity that helps lower income individuals that have dogs on chains. A group of volunteers comes and builds a fence free of charge for the dog.
That's awesome. I mean, we've supported Freedom for Fido before, and Fritz Gilbert and his wife have created this charity in retirement. So a shout out to Fritz Gilbert, the Retirement Manifesto, and his wife. They're doing great work in retirement, and it's important to know what you're retiring to. He writes all about retirement, and it's not just about the number, it's making the transition into your second or third or fourth chapter. And they are busier than ever. And this charity has turned into hundreds of volunteers, many fences for dogs in the last couple of years. They are doing great work. And we want to pay homage to Rudy. I have a Rudy, Aussie Labradoodle. You guys had a Rudy and he passed away recently. Sorry for your loss.
Aww.
Thank you.
Thank you.
He was special. That's why we want to recognize Freedom for Fido, and we want to get down there and build some fences ourselves someday.
Oh, awesome. And our Rudy and our Lily, when you talk about giving back, it isn't just about money. My wife and I volunteer at East Tennessee Children's Hospital with our dogs in the HABIT program, HABIT, Human Animal Bond in Tennessee. So we take our dogs to the hospital on Fridays and we visit with families, staff, and patients who are challenged with cancer diagnoses. We're both physicians and we're often responsible for managing people's journeys. And when we go there, they don't know who we are. We are just the escorts for two dogs that bring smiles to people, and we give back of our time, and our dogs give back. They love their job. They get all dressed up, and every Friday it's a way to just sort of turn the tables and be somebody that's giving unconditional love, which is really cool. So dogs are near and dear to our hearts, and we have a Rudy, you had a Rudy, and when you lose a dog, it's kind of like losing a child. So we feel for you, and the Rainbow Bridge, our Rudy will meet your Rudy someday, and they'll be prancing around. All right. You don't yet know who Paul and Amanda are, so let's introduce them, Jackie. I'll take it a little bit from here. So I first met Paul and his wife Amanda in a cold call email from Minnesota. He and Amanda were planning on moving their lives out of the cold white north into the southeast. Paul stumbled across me, and he'll have to tell me how exactly, in the Phi space and reached out with questions about Knoxville as a possible place to settle down in their new Phi life. I love how this community draws people together. The reciprocal warmth is quite infectious. It is a place where 6 degrees of separation, strangers become fast friends. So fast forward, a year or two later or so, this dynamic duo packed up their house and moved into a seasoned Toyota Camry with their dog, Rudy, who sadly recently passed away, as we said. They set off as newly minted pioneers on a journey to find a new home. They stopped in Knoxville, and Karen and I, my wife, had a wonderful lunch with them in our neighborhood. We shared our real estate agent with them. We took them on a tour of the area. We didn't know what would happen here because they were looking everywhere. Rural, city, South Carolina, North Carolina, and Tennessee. So we didn't know what would come of this. But shortly after we record this podcast, Paul and Amanda will be closing on their new home just down the street, or at least the town over from Karen and I. The Southeast is becoming a capital of Phi.
We got to hear more about that move because I heard that was pretty interesting. And I want to know more about how you chose Knoxville and Tennessee because I've been kind of having my eye there too. So just a little bit more about Paul. Paul was a late starter and discovered the power of financial independence through his early starter wife, Amanda. She sparked a passion that has shaped both his personal and professional life. As a certified personal financial wellness consultant, Paul helps others build lasting wealth while enjoying a balanced, purposeful driven life. Paul is also a newly minted author of a book called Once Upon a Phi, and I got the honor to read it. So did you, Bill. He has invented a new genre to spread the word of financial independence. It is a unique, Oliver Twisty reimagination of classic tales from our childhoods, weaving in the principles of financial independence and honoring creators in the space for their contributions to the culture. This book, which started out as letters to his daughter, which is close to my heart after writing a book to my daughter back in the day, but it marks the culmination of his journey toward financial freedom and his mission to share the knowledge he's gained along the way. We both wrote a blurb, but Bill's actually ended up on the back of the book. We are thrilled to host Paul and Amanda on their first ever podcast, telling their story and showcasing the world premiere of Once Upon a Fi. So Paul and Amanda, welcome to Catching Up to Fi.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for having us. It's an honor.
Well, we love having, as we call them, podcast virgins on the show. Jackie had to set them up with all the equipment. They've got it all right. They sound beautiful. They look beautiful. They're ready to rock and roll as they market this new book. So we love good stories, much like your book. But before we get to the book, we must really start at your beginnings. Amanda, you go first. Take us through a synopsis of your personal and financial journey, starting with the lessons you learned in your formative years, and bring us forward.
I grew up in a lower middle class family. I have an older brother, and it's interesting that we both grew up in the same household, and yet we ended up on two very different tracks. He wanted to get everything he was unable to get as a kid. And I took the other path where I was happy having very little. I had a great childhood and I didn't want the same stresses that my parents had with money. And so I just became a natural saver. It started super early. When I would go trick-or-treating on Halloween, I'd come home with all my candy. My brother would eat all of his in the first day or two, and I'd have a piece or two a day so that I had enough candy to carry me over to the next Halloween.
That's like a marshmallow test. You've heard of the marshmallow test. You were the kid that naturally waited for the second marshmallow. This is great. So it's the Halloween candy test. Please go. I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. When I got a little bit older and started babysitting and dog sitting, I saved all the money. I never had any desire to go out and spend it on new trinkets or anything. And then my first job after college, I sat in my desk and I was like, are you serious? Like, this is what I'm meant to do for the next 45 years? This sounds awful. And I wanted to find a different way out. I didn't want to do what everyone else did. It didn't sound any fun. And so I just started saving without really any intention in mind other than not doing this forever. So one day in 2017, I was sitting at work and I came across a Yahoo Finance article, and it was advertised as like this couple in their 30s retired early and started traveling the world. And it was about Go Curry Cracker. So I clicked in there and read that, and I was like, oh my gosh, they're doing my dream. I didn't know other people had this dream. In the article, they mentioned Mr. Money Mustache, and so I kind of went down that rabbit hole, and then I found J.L. Collins and read The Simple Path to Wealth, and I was hooked. I was like, this is my people. I didn't know there were other people like me. And right about that time, I found the Choose FI podcast when they were like on their third episode. So I started right from the start, listening to all their episodes. And they talked about the creation of a Camp FI Midwest, and which was right in our home state. I came home from work and I was like, Paul, I'm going to go to this camp thing. You're more than welcome to come with me. But like, this is something that I for sure want to do. And he was like, yeah, okay, I'm up for it. Let's see what's up. And so first night, we were both completely on the journey. We were sucked in. That's kind of how we began our journey together on the FI path.
I'm interested to know, in 2017, you found FI, but how close to FI were you based on your early starting and your financial acumen and getting it right from the beginning? Did you realize maybe you were FI already and didn't know it?
I wasn't quite at that point. I was pretty close, maybe 2/3 there. And I had a pretty decent paying job at that time. I did reach my actual FI number in 2019, but I did keep working.
You just recently retired, so congratulations.
Congrats. The bells and whistles go off when we hear somebody that retired. And you know, Bill, we're doing this informal survey about from the time that people wake up, especially late starters, about how long did it take you to get to financial independence and or get to the point where you were able to decouple from your job and retire. Have you ever looked at the numbers?
It was about 20 years that I actually did work, but I had reached FI in probably 15 years, less than so.
Retirement or two in there.
Yeah, I did any retirements as well. I took 9 months off and 14 months off.
What did you do during that time? That's amazing.
I just kind of explored my hobbies. I wanted to feel what retirement felt like. I wanted to do what I wanted to do for a while. The pull of kind of earning more money always came back to me. I'm definitely one of those one more year syndrome folks. I'm hoping this last instance is like the final instance.
Who taught you about personal finance? Did you have a mentor or did you do it all yourself? I mean, as far as the mechanics of it, were you an index investor right from the beginning? Did you make mistakes? What did it look like? Was it messy?
I definitely made mistakes. Saving was easy for me. That was not an issue at all. I just wasn't sure what to do with it. I did hire a financial planner early on, or a financial advisor, and ended up in variable life insurance policy. And so I stuck a lot of money in there. I haven't even gone back to add up how much I've lost in front load fees.
Is that more like a whole life insurance? Is that a version of a whole life insurance policy?
It's a high commission, front loaded product. I did the same thing. If you go back and calculate it, you'll find that it was probably around $30,000 or more in commissions. It's not cheap and it's a costly mistake, but I made the same one. You were sold a product by your financial advisor, right? That happens all too commonly. On this show, we're all about finding the proper financial advisor that's fee only, advice only, or project management focused. So that doesn't sound like what you found out. That was one mistake. Did you make any others along the way?
I think that was really my only mistake. And it was a big one considering I was in my 20s. And so that money could have compounded a lot over the years.
Well, and it sounds like that advisor was actually an insurance salesman. So I think sometimes advisors or financial planners even will get a bad name from a lot of people that are just using the title inappropriately, where they're not really an advisor. So that's just a tip for everyone else. Be careful for anyone that calls themselves a financial advisor or even a financial planner, because it's not a regulated term or title. Almost anyone can call themselves that.
I'm a financial advisor, right? We're on the podcast. I'm a planner. I don't take my advice. We just talk about it for fun and give people ideas. It's about education on this show.
We should come clean here. The CFP that she bought the variable life policy from was my boss at the time. I had sold my business and I went to work assisting him. He truly was a CFP. I just think that's before we discovered FI and index funds and all the above. That's just kind of what you did. I have a tremendous amount of respect for the man. I thought he's a person of integrity. I don't want to bash him at all, but we lived and learned.
I was about to say, generally for someone her age, whole life policy might not be the best fit. We don't want to do a one size fits all, because certainly there's some place for that type of product. To your point, just because they're CFP, it does not mean that they have the model or the compensation model that fits you. Like Bill was saying, right. Everyone has a website now, though. Most financial planners, they have written articles, blog posts, been on podcasts where you can get to know them. But it just goes to show you that you have to know what you want. You don't go to the professional and have them tell you what you want, because they already have in their mind what you want or what they sell. So lesson learned.
So Amanda, this is like 20 years ago. I think you're in your 40s, and the dawn of index funds was in the 90s. In the year 2000 or so, I was lost in space, didn't know what net worth was, never heard of an index fund. Did you teach yourself, and did you get the investing part right from the beginning, or was there a learning process?
I was kind of a J.L. Collins simple path to wealth, like the VT Sack, set it and forget it. And during the accumulation phase, that worked so perfect for me. It was easy, it was simple, it made sense. And I could just work on making money and then putting it away and not have to think about it.
Simple is best often. All right, Paul, before you guys merged your financial lives, you had your own financial life and your own story. And as we mentioned in the introduction, you were a self-admitted late starter. Tell us what the early financial models were, traumas were, that may have led you to create different habits from Amanda, because she was frugal and she saved. But was that the case for you?
It was not. I don't know that I had any traumas, but I definitely learned half of the equation. I just saw you two on Earn and Invest. I learned the earn side. I didn't learn the invest side growing up. And so I always worked hard. I always made money. One thing that I think I had the FI instincts of was I did not possess the keep up with the Joneses. I've never owned a new car in my life. Back when you wore watches, when you weren't carrying around a phone with a clock on it, I always had a Timex. I never had a Rolex. I kind of always understood the difference between utility and luxury. The car is just supposed to get you from place to place. It's not supposed to be shiny or a status symbol of any kind. But what I did lack was the saving and investment side of it. I thought nothing of going out to eat 4 or 5 nights a week. I always said there were probably times where I drove home in a car that was worth less than the restaurant tab I just paid. I always avoided debt, but I still lived paycheck to paycheck most of my young adult life. I owned a business, and the plan at that point was for that business to just provide income for the rest of my life. But a divorce, the kibosh on that plan, sold the business, and that's when I went to work for the certified financial planner. But then in 2008, we started dating, and I quickly learned her ways. At that time, I was divorced, so I was a single parent with a daughter with joint custody. So saving was still very difficult at that time. I bought a townhouse following my divorce, and that was shortly just before the crash. So I was underwater on my townhome for quite some time. I had struggled pretty hard for those years in my 40s until we got together. I kind of learned her ways. And then once my daughter went off on her own, we were double income, no kids. We had a mortgage, but we had no other debt. We both had decent paying jobs. So at that point, it was really pretty easy to not deprive ourselves and still have a very high savings rate.
So, Paul, as a divorced person myself, and we've got a lot of divorced people in our community, and a lot of times that's what causes them to be a late starter because they end up starting over. How was that transition for you? Like, did it throw you behind some years? Did it wake you up? And did Amanda just come in and rescue you?
Yes, on all counts. It definitely threw me behind. And like I said, not just the divorce, but I said when I sold the business, I thought I sold it for a very good amount of money. But once you pay off the remaining debt on that business, you pay the taxes and you split it in half, there's not a lot left. And so it really was kind of starting over at that point. One mistake I made was having that business and not having an exit strategy. So I spent some time after I sold it, I spent some time unemployed. I bounced around a couple of jobs until I found one that kind of suited me better. But yeah, the savings part of it was learned behavior, and that's who taught me.
What industry was your business in?
I owned a franchise business, 2 UPS stores. I got into the network when they were mailboxes, etc. And then while I was there, UPS bought the franchise itself, became the franchisor. So they became UPS stores. So I did that for 7 years.
Did you always have an entrepreneur gene in you?
I think I do. Yeah, I think I still do. Maybe this book is kind of part of it too. But yeah, I think I do have that entrepreneur spirit to me.
Yeah. So, Amanda, I'm wondering, so when he was telling you the story, when he sold the business, he was out of work for a couple of years or whatever, did you tell him he should have been doing Roth conversions at that time?
I'm not even sure if he had a lot of retirement money put away at that point to convert.
Did you know what a net worth was? Were you like me? Were you in sort of a paycheck to paycheck lifestyle with no debt? Were you aware financially at all?
I was aware that I didn't have debt. I was also aware that I didn't have investments. I'll never forget when I was working for this CFP firm, they put on a little presentation for the employees. And I was one of the older people there in my mid 40s at the time. And one of the CFPs that was one of the founders said, he basically was talking about compounding and when you start at your 20s and your 30s. And he made the statement, I'll never forget it, if you start at 50, it's too late.
We hear that a lot.
Yeah, and I was 45 at the time, and oh my gosh, I'm in trouble. But then when Amanda introduced me to some of these concepts, and specifically Mr. Money Mustache and the shockingly simple math, I thought he can do this in 10 years. He can save enough to retire, and he's going to fund 40, 50 years of retirement. I can certainly do this and fund 20, 30, whatever I have left.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and debunk that myth. About how long from the time you woke up, I'm assuming maybe it was close to the time you got with Amanda, from that point, how long did it take you to reach financial independence where if you wanted to, you didn't have to depend on a paycheck from a regular job?
I still had my daughter living at home. I was badly underwater on that townhouse. So saving was still very difficult up until about 2015. And I retired in 2023. I was starting to save and starting the process, but those 8 years between 2015 and 2023, we really hit it hard. We both had decent incomes. We got mortgage free. So at that point, we had no debt. We had savings rates in the 70%, 75% range. We had a side business going at the same time. So we were raking it in and living a good life at the same time.
There's that entrepreneur again. There's that entrepreneur. But that's pretty cool. We hear that a lot, that from the time you wake up, do you feel like you surprised yourself in how quickly you were able to get to financial independence from 2015 to 2023?
Well, I remember seeing that savings rate chart, and 75% is 8 years or what have you. It really did. A couple of years, once we got the mortgage paid off, and we still were both working full time, had no debt whatsoever, and we don't deprive ourselves. I never felt deprived through that time. We still traveled, but we do so on a budget.
So I want to take us back a little bit because this is interesting. There's a bit of an age gap here that we'll have to talk about because I think it plays a role. There's about a 15, 20-year age gap between the two of you or something like that. This is a love story that starts in childhood. We got to let Amanda tell us that this was a 6 degrees of separation story too, right?
Yeah. Our parents have been really good friends since before I was born. So I think the first time I met Paul, I was probably a month old. I don't remember. But at about age 3, I developed a huge crush on him. And that crush carried on until he got married when I was 8. And so I was at his first wedding and I was like the one in the corner, like pouting. And we saw each other once or twice more at one of his sister's wedding. And then we didn't see each other for 18 years. He went off and did his life. I was doing mine. And then in 2008, we were both happened to just be on business lunches. We were in a completely empty restaurant and they seated us at tables right next to each other. And I looked up and I was like, I think that's Paul. And I saw he made eye contact with me and I was like, I think he might recognize me. We just kind of made eye contact the whole time and left without saying anything because I didn't want to make myself look stupid by going over there. And so as soon as I walked out of the restaurant, I called my mom and I said, hey, do you know where Paul is these days, where he lives, where he works? And she's like, well, no, but email me everything you just told me and I'll forward it to his mom. And so I did. And she forwarded it to his mom and his mom forwarded it to him. And the next day I show up to work and I have an email from him. And he said, that was me. I was wondering if that was you too. And so we scheduled a lunch date and we went on a lunch date and sparks kind of flew and we've been together ever since.
So that's why I wanted to tell the love story because maybe Paul babysat for you. Who knows?
I always make the strange but true statement that I've known her parents longer than she has. But going back to that lunch, I remember sitting there. We were both at business lunches, so we were with other people. And I was looking over at her, and the only reason I thought I recognized her is her family would send Christmas cards to my family every year with their pictures. So I thought that was her, but I wasn't sure enough to go say hello to her or anything like that. So I was really happy to see that email the next day.
What's interesting here is the age gap might play a role in finances. And I'm kind of curious. Amanda's been an early starter. She's accumulated assets as you're coming into a relationship. You've been debt-free, but not much of a saver. Tell us a little bit about how you may have merged your financial journeys.
When we first started going, one of the early memories I have of her being a saver was when we first started dating. She was 26 years old. I was 44. And she called me one day and said, congratulate me. I just paid off my student loan. You're 26 years old. I have friends my age that haven't paid off their student loans yet. But yeah, we've managed our finances really well together. Maybe because of the age difference, the no kids, getting married a little later in life. We've kind of done the hers, mine, and ours management of money. where we put the same amount into a joint account every month, more or less to cover our common expenses. When we had a mortgage, our utilities, we always padded it enough to have a travel fund in there as well. But then beyond that, we had our own separate finances. So when she wants to buy a garage door for her mother, I don't have anything to say about it. When I want to do something for my daughter or my granddaughter, I let her know. We just don't have money fights. We never have.
I think also I wanted to point out there's been some studies done around the fact that it takes men longer to mature than women. So we almost
I'm a living example of that. I didn't financially mature until my 50s. I was an infant for a very long time.
if we want to find a guy on our level, it's like we almost have to date older than us because it takes longer for guys to mature. Now, that's not scientific on my part, but there are some studies done in that space that seem to lean in that direction.
Well, we're a good example because I always say I'm very young at heart and she's an old soul. So this works well. But the truth is I'm very immature.
That's why you wrote a children's book, and we'll get into that later. But Amanda, you were financially savvy. You've been a saver. You met Paul. There's a big financial disparity in your knowledge and potential resources and wealth. Was that a problem for you?
Not at all. I think simply because we decided to do the his, hers, and ours, that I was fine knowing that I was taking care of myself and building my little nest egg and that I didn't need him for anything. And therefore, I knew that he was getting on board. So it wasn't like he was dragging behind. He was making his own way, and I was confident in that. And so we just have each of our own FI numbers. We've hit our own FI numbers in our own way, and it just really works for us separately.
Well, that's interesting, Jackie, because we've always talked about a FI number being, at least in a partnership, a joint number, and to have separate FI numbers that might be dramatically different, but you live the same life, you live the same lifestyle. I find that interesting.
Yeah, and it works even better in our case because I'm more lean FI than she is, but I'm much closer. Social Security and Medicare are right around the corner for me, so that eases the stress a little bit as well. But we're both fine. We'll be just fine. And it does point out that I know she's married to me because she wants to be, because she doesn't need me for anything, maybe other than reaching things on tall shelves.
This is important for our audience because we do have a lot of women that end up being a spouse that stays at home and has a husband as the primary earner, where they're not focused on their own financial independence, and they don't realize until later that they're financially in many ways dependent. And the movement these days is for women to take control of their money younger so that they can control their own destiny. Right, Amanda? And you were on top of this early.
That's the funny thing too, is my parents got together very young in life. My mom was 15 when her and my dad started dating, and she was never interested in the money. She never knew anything about it. And she said to me all the time from a very young age, don't be me, figure out how to do things yourself and don't depend on a man. She's like, don't make my mistakes. And I very much took that to heart, and I'm very thankful for that advice.
Your mom is a wise woman. So, Paul, I have a question for you. So you mentioned Social Security and Medicare. So because there's this 20-year gap, have you guys discussed on your strategy for taking Social Security? Because you kind of have to look at it a little differently when you're a married couple and you have a 20-year age gap.
Yeah, you do. And we're still open-minded about it, but I think it works out. Even if this wasn't the issue, I'm going to do everything I can to wait till 70 to take Social Security. And it does work out better with the age gap difference to do that as well. So
yeah, I know that comes up.
But things that come up aren't just like yours, mine, and ours. What comes up too, given that you have a daughter, is kind of estate planning. How have you approached that?
It's a good question. We have beneficiaries on all our investment accounts, of course. And so I have it split, basically, where my daughter gets some. Amanda doesn't need much from me, so that's helpful. Of course, that eases a lot of burden. At the same time, I don't want to have my daughter, she's 29 years old right now. I don't want her thinking this big nest egg is coming her way at some point. I'm really more focused with her, and it's part of the reason I wrote the book. I'm really more focused with her on financial literacy than I am any kind of inheritance or generational wealth.
So you're in the die with zero camp a little bit, it sounds like, right?
A little, yeah. Although I don't mind the idea of leaving her something when I do die. I don't need to die with zero, but obviously I want to make the most of it in these years, in all aspects of life, including teaching her and giving her the future future that she needs financially.
You're teaching her how to fish, which is really important in our space. And then maybe it's time to move on to the book, Jackie, because this is a great segue. He's talking about his daughter and teaching her how to fish. And this book, Once Upon a Fi, is a way of doing that, not just for her, like you did with your book for your daughter, but for a new generation of financially literate people. Right, Paul?
I hope so. Yeah, that's really who it's designed for. I have a former coworker and current friend that I worked with her for about 10 years, and she would be involved in our conversations about money quite often. She knew my interest in financial independence. She knew I told her about these Camp Fives and everything. And she would ask me all sorts of questions. I helped her. I sent her a couple of my spreadsheets and things like that. But I would also give her a podcast to listen to. I'd give her a book. I recommended The Simple Path to Wealth, Catching Up to 5 different podcasts. And she couldn't get through it. It read like a textbook to her. She just couldn't sit and listen to it. And I just thought maybe there is a market out there. Maybe people in the FI community know people like this that need the less intimidating kind of starter kit approach to joining this community and learning these aspects of financial independence.
Yeah, and we are recording this during Financial Literacy Month, which is April. So I definitely love your approach. And I have said this so many times, Paul, that not everyone does a big, thick book. That doesn't resonate with everyone. I think the way that you've done it is unique enough to get the attention of a lot of people that may not be willing to read a big, serious book, or maybe they just have a different way of learning. And I love that you have made a space for that. Now, you as the entrepreneur, okay, you went out on your own and decided, I'm going to not just write this book, I'm going to publish it, do the marketing, do everything. And I would like to know more, because I feel like there's some people in our audience that might have an interest in putting what they know into a book. So I would like to know the process that it took to be able to bring this book to life, from conceptualizing it to actually writing it, getting it put together, formatting, published, all of that. What was that like?
It's quite a process, as you know. I really meant for this book to be an easy read. I wanted it to be short. The whole concept is for it to be the least intimidating book anybody's ever read about money. I thought it should be easy, but the publishing aspect of it is not easy. In fact, I signed on with a publisher that I found online. And about 4 months into the process, I fired them. It cost me some money. It cost me some time. But this is important to me. This really turned into a passion project for me. And I wanted it to have the feel and look of a children's storybook, an old school children's storybook. And this first publisher was so impersonal, and it just didn't feel right. And I followed my gut and moved on to a local publisher here in Minnesota. And it's been so much better this way. I'm really happy with the way the illustrations turned out. I just couldn't be happier. As far as the writing of the book itself, my daughter and her friend actually are contemplating writing a book. And they asked my advice. And the best piece of advice I had for them in the writing process is just lean into it. If you have an idea, if something strikes you, write it all down, get it down on paper, and just follow your instincts. And that's really the way this book turned out. Originally, I just thought about writing one story. I just had an idea for one story. It came from a letter that I had written to my daughter. The letter itself was reminding her of a play I took her to when she was about 10, 11 years old. And it was a satirical version of A Christmas Carol. And the letter I wrote to her, I wrote over 100 letters to her, so this was just one of them. But the letter I wrote to her about this was reminding her of taking that play and saying, think of how your spending is in that manner. How much are you spending on that spirit of spending past? You bought that car 2 years ago and you sent in the monthly payment today. You made that past purchase. Spending present is you stopped at the convenience store on the way to work and picked up a bunch of sodas and snacks and things. And then spending future is your savings and 401k and other investment vehicles. And of course, I encouraged her to tilt those percentages as much to the spending yet to come as she could. So that led me to the idea of rewriting A Christmas Carol. And so that was my original idea. I was just going to do that. I wasn't even thinking of a book at that time. But then I started thinking of other children's stories that kind of fit the morals and lessons that could be reimagined to fit the morals and lessons of finance. And so a number of them work pretty well, I think. It was a pretty natural fit. I say in the book, the end goal of these stories matches the end goal of financial independence, and that's to live happily ever after.
We are honored because somehow you came across us before this book was written. And when I read your book, I'm like, oh my goodness, The Tortoise and the Hare. Catching Up to Phi is in the first chapter. Can you tell us a little bit about the Tortoise and the Hare story?
Yeah, I could read an excerpt for you if you'd like.
Well, please do. That'd be great. Everybody, pull up a nice cup of coffee. If you're in the northern climes, light a fire. We're about to have a fireside chat with Paul and Amanda here.
He's putting the glasses on. Go to YouTube. He's putting the glasses on.
Yeah, the strength of these now is greater than my college GPA.
I think that means they're pretty powerful for you to read.
Okay, so the tortoise and the hare, I think you can probably imagine they have different investment strategies. The tortoise, of course, invests in index funds and stays the course. The hare hops from investment to investment and in and out of the market. So here's my excerpt. Undeterred by the hare's sudden lead, the tortoise remained steadfast in his approach, quietly persevering toward his own financial freedom. With focused determination, he continued to execute his well-crafted strategy, undisturbed by the ebbs and flows of the market. For the tortoise, the journey was not about catching up to the hare, but rather about forging his own path and catching up to Phi. As fate would have it, a couple years later, the stock market faltered, causing the tortoise and the hare to fall back a bit. Yet their responses to the crisis couldn't have been more different. While the tortoise maintained his unwavering course, seizing the opportunity to capitalize on market downturns by increasing his investments, the hare succumbed to panic and fear.
Wow, I love that.
Catching Up to Phi is in bold italics, like a number of the content creators that are referenced in the book. And then following each story, I have something called the Financial Independence Concepts, where I talk about time in the market versus timing the market in this case. And then I have another follow-up to the story with the Phi references in the story, which in this case was Catching Up to Phi.
So this book is really a jumping off point. I mean, there's a book that William Bernstein wrote, If You Can, which is 16 pages. And it's like a triage book where he points you, if you're interested in this, and if you can do this, go here, 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 to go down the rabbit hole. And I see your book more or less in the same genre, but this is a new genre. We had the first Phi album this year. We probably got Phi poetry. People are really coming at this from all angles. We got Fire for Dummies, which Jackie wrote. So there's so many angles on this, but you have created a new genre, and I love it. I absolutely love it. And we are honored, Jackie, to be included in this book.
Yeah, and let me say this also. Many of us are parents now, or we have nieces or nephews that are in elementary school, middle school, where this might be a great target audience. It is part of our responsibility, I think, to try to have these discussions about money and personal finance. There's 27 states now, the most recent one is Kentucky, that requires personal finance in high school. However, most states don't have a mandate for elementary and middle school, but they can absolutely, as you've shown, Paul, grasp some of these ideas. You just need to make the material be age appropriate. I can see the librarian at the elementary school reading to the kids. I can see this for any teacher. So if you have kids or grandkids or someone in elementary or middle school, present something like this to them as a starting point to teaching your kids about money in the context of something that they can absolutely understand.
Well, this is a great gift. If you're looking for gifts for kids for their birthdays, why not give them the gift of financial independence or the gift of financial literacy? And we are going to shout this to the mountaintops to try and help Paul get his book out into the world. Now, one of the stories has to do with Amanda, if I'm not mistaken. So which one was that? And maybe we'll have her read an excerpt from that.
I had to change the name. It's based on The Ugly Duckling by Hans Christian Andersen. Obviously, that title didn't work, so I changed it to The Odd Duckling. It really is kind of her biography, and it ties into The Ugly Duckling, feeling out of place and kind of on your own, in this case, with her feelings about finance.
Say what you will about The Odd Duckling, but I could tell you that Amanda has some mad hula hoop skills. She showed us at Economy. This girl has moves that you wish you had. So Amanda, can you read a little excerpt from The Odd Duckling? I'd love to hear that.
One fateful day, the odd duckling stumbled upon an intriguing internet story about a married duck couple who, through disciplined saving, retired early to travel the globe, enjoying curry and crackers. This revelation opened the floodgates and led to a discovery of a duck with a mustache who is a dedicated saver like her. Suddenly, she started thinking maybe she wasn't that odd after all. She had to find out how these ducks got to where they were. She delved deeper into research, uncovering a duck who had penned an entire book outlining the simple path to achieving financial dreams. Encouraged by this knowledge, she yearned to connect with these like minded ducks. Learning about their gatherings, she made the bold decision to attend one of their camps, hoping to find kindred spirits. To her delight, the ducks at the camp, while at different points on the path, shared her values. They all seemed to have one big thing in common. They didn't spend duck bucks they didn't have on duck things they didn't need to impress ducks they didn't like.
I love it. That's so cool. It brings up the point that it's sad that when you're financially literate, financially aware, and a saver before a spender, that you are the odd duck in our consumer culture. Don't we want to flip that on its head? And isn't that why we're here?
And when they start hearing those messages so early, how do you even start talking to kids about money? So you've done it with this book, but my response typically is as soon as they can learn how to take their little fingers and pinch them together and hold a coin and drop it into a bank. That's how early you need to start teaching them, which means at 2, 3, 4 years old, they can grasp these concepts. We just need to put it in a context in which they can understand it and it's age appropriate. And I tell you, we've got some of the most creative people in the FI community. I'm listening to this and I'm just loving it.
Well, just make sure, as the emergency physician, they don't use their mouth as the piggy bank and swallow it, because I have to see them then. Use a piggy bank. Don't give them the coins when they're like, let's see how it tastes.
Yes, it needs to be done under some serious supervision, for sure.
All right. Well, there's more stories we want to hear about, too. Just to iterate what's in this book, you do one on Jack and the Beanstalk, magic cards that sprout growing debt. You do one on the boy who cried wealth, a lesson in stealth wealth. You have one on the three little pigs, getting a straw, sticks, or bricks mortgage. Now, the next one I want to hear about really is Chicken Little, where the market is falling. We've had issues with this and volatility lately, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about why you use Chicken Little as an example for this.
I thought it worked really well. It's not the sky that's falling, it's the market. And as we record this, it's an interesting time to read this excerpt because things are very volatile at the moment.
All right, lay it on us.
Chicken Little. As Chicken Little dreamt away, an acorn detached from the towering oak and tumbled down, ultimately bouncing off her petite little head. Though a bit shaken, Chicken Little brushed off the incident, dismissing it as a mere consequence of nature. As she roused from her nap, she rubbed her head and instinctively reached for her phone. The calmness of the day was about to be disrupted by an alert that would ruffle her feathers. A foreboding notification popped up on her screen, announcing a staggering 20% drop in the stock market. Panic surged through Chicken Little like a bolt of lightning through the sky. "The market is falling! The market is falling!" she shrieked, her alarmed voice echoing through the autumn air. Seeking reassurance, she turned to market-related video feeds, only to be met with a chorus of doomsday predictions from the so-called experts. The squawk box only enhanced her panic. A singular thought raced through her mind: I have to go tell the king. And just a spoiler alert, she meets up with other panicked birds along the way and gets to the palace. The king tells her to go talk to the Godfather, and Godfather Collins gives her some very sage advice.
Aw, look at that. So, Paul, we know that you've got some great entrepreneurial skills. Where did you get these great writing skills? Because I'm feeling the poetry, I'm feeling the creative way to put pen to paper. Where'd you get those skills from?
I don't know. I've always enjoyed writing. When I was in high school, my senior year, I wrote for the local newspaper. I covered our high school football team. I still have a byline in my old memory book, a football story. I went to college and I started off being an English major in college. I later changed that to business. But I've always enjoyed reading and writing, and I'm thankful to those that I put in my acknowledgments in the book, my parents, my teachers, my babysitters, everybody that encouraged me to read these stories. I really am appreciative of it.
We were at Economy together. I want to mention one thing real quickly is one of the speakers, Azul, I don't remember his last name, but he says that we all have at least one book in us. It's just a matter of getting the story out into the world. You guys are doing this. It's like being afraid of public speaking. It's like being afraid of writing a book. How did you overcome any fear you might have in doing this?
Well, imposter syndrome is a real thing, and I kind of feel like this book has imposter syndrome written all over it. I could never write, so I don't think I could write Fire for Dummies. I can't imagine how much work that was. Oh my goodness.
It was.
I mean, this simple, short book has been a lot of work, and I look at Fire for Dummies, oh my gosh, it's so comprehensive. In the editing process, you really contemplate every word. A big comprehensive book like that has to be a lot of work.
Yeah, thank you for that. There was a whole team behind it as well, including another fellow friend of ours. Cody Garrett was my technical editor. It does take a lot of work. You were doing a lot of things yourself, and that to me makes it even harder. Now, you did have an illustrator, and I love the illustrations of that book. We'll try to show a few of them on the YouTube, but how did you find your illustrator?
Just through the self-publishing company that I used. And again, I'm very thankful. I saw that first publishing company I was working with sent me a few illustrations that just seemed very generic. I really wanted that old school feel to the whole book, including the illustrations. So thank you for that. Her name was Vanessa, and I think she did a great job.
Well, we're going to have to nickname you Hans Christian Mollenkopf.
Yeah, there you go. Hey, there's the title of the episode.
If I could just get back to the imposter syndrome question, though, I think the way I overcame it was I leaned into what I think are my strengths. I do know the basics. I can do that. And so that's what I wrote about. And in writing to my letters, I'm sure you know this too as well, Jackie, I wrote over 100 letters to my daughter, and they weren't all 100 different subjects. They were a lot of times repeating yourself, but trying to find different ways to present it, finding something that might resonate with her. And so that's where that effort took me.
Yeah, I think your daughter being your inspiration is beautiful. My daughter was my inspiration. And I did that first book. It was self-published, and I just used the company. And it's interesting. So for anyone that's listening that ever thought about writing a book, way back in the day when I graduated from college, I was a journalism major, and it was so discouraging because they said basically it was traditional publishing, and you had the top 5, and they all had like a 95% rejection rate. So I knew that couldn't be my career. I couldn't really make money off of writing, but it's just, to me, a much more viable way. It's much easier to get a book out through self-publishing that costs very little. There's so many different levels that you can do this at, but the whole idea is getting out what's in your head, perhaps being inspired by somebody like your daughter, your granddaughter, someone in your life, to be able to share it with the world. Like, that's doable for almost anyone. So I love that you did this. And I'm curious, has your daughter read the book, or your granddaughter, and what do they think about it?
My daughter has read it. She read a much earlier draft, actually. She hasn't seen the final copy yet, but she was very supportive. She loved it. My daughter will be 5 in a couple of weeks here, or my granddaughter will be 5. So she has not read it yet. I don't think it's been read to her yet, but I definitely had her in mind.
What did she call you, your granddaughter? Papa, Grandpa?
She calls me Grandpa, but she calls her Gramanda.
Oh, Grandma. Yeah.
I'm the writer. I came up with that.
So she's going to say, Grandpa wrote this book for me. Now, that's part of your legacy now. A lot of times when we're talking about legacy, we're talking about money and who to name on the accounts and all that type of stuff. But really, a legacy is something like this. It will live on. Your granddaughter will read it. Her daughter will read it. And it will go on because Grandpa Paul wrote this, poured his heart out, and wrote this book for us.
Well, Paul, you are now a creator. And by inference, Amanda's a creator, because I'm sure she's in one of the stories. So she had some influence. And you pay homage to several creators in the spy space. Can you give us a little smattering of who shows up in the book and in what roles?
Yeah, it really was like the references. Well, the excerpt that Amanda read, there are, again, bold italics around curry and crackers, the simple path, mustache, of course. We all know who these refer to, and camps. Shout out Stephen Boyer and Camp Fies, because that's had a big impact on my life. The way it started was I didn't have that in mind when I was originally writing the stories. In fact, I'd written a couple of the shorter stories, and I was taking notes and writing ideas down for the spending carol. And I was writing out, okay, they get visited by past, present, and future. And in my case, it's a married couple that gets visited by these spirits. And I was writing out the note for when they get visited by the spirit of spending yet to come. And I thought, okay, how far in the future is it going to be? 5 years, 10 years? How about 1,500 days? And so that's where the light bulb kind of went off. I leaned into it and decided to just give shout outs to most of the creators that had a big impact on me early on in this journey. It's impossible to do something like this without leaving some people out, but it included the 1,500 days. And I thought that worked out well because Carl Jensen was actually at that first Camp Fi we went to. So we got to meet him. He presented. And of course, he and Mindy both do it with such great humor, which I want to do with this book as well. So that was a very good fit. But for the most part, it's pretty easy. Like I felt like Catching Up to 5 fit in pretty well with the Tortoise and the Hare story. The guy acted like he could afford anything. And of course, that's a reference to Paula Pants. So I think there's about 14, 15 of those references in the book.
I think that's a great springboard. And really, as a creator, I never thought in becoming a podcaster and creating Catching Up to 5, working with Jackie, that we would make it into other people's works. I mean, it's really an honor and a privilege because Jackie has a couple pages on Catching Up to 5. We are paid homage in Shauna Games' book. Everybody's talking about money. She pays homage to Catching Up to 5 as one of her favorite podcasts. And I'm just dumbfounded that what we're creating here is expanding into other people's creations, just like what you do. It's so cool. This community is such a cool bubble in which to live. And what we're trying to do with all that we create is bring more people into the bubble of sort of financial wellness, as you teach, financial health, financial independence, financial literacy, right, Jackie?
Yeah, Bill, we need to expand that bubble. And we're already doing that. It takes a while to actually go outside of that. I think this is one of those books that, again, will apply to anyone, any parent, teacher, anyone that has a young person in their lives to help them get started teaching their kids, grandkids, or whatever about money. So I get the question a lot. I don't know if you do, Bill, but people will say, do you know any good children's book about money or personal finance? Now I have something that I'm happy to share that I think is going to be so valuable. But Paul, where can we find the book and when will it be released?
I don't have a hard for the release yet. It's going to be right around the end of May, early June. So it should be right around the time this podcast gets released. You can go to onceuponafy.com and see all about it. And it'll have the order details in there. And it has some letters to my daughter in there as well. So I would just encourage everybody to go to onceuponafy.com and go from there.
Okay, we'll definitely drop that in the show notes, but we'll be anxiously awaiting the release of this. I know you probably can't wait either to see this actually in print, where you can see all the illustrations and the front cover and the back cover, and especially Bill, because he wrote a little blurb on the back cover. So we'll be anxiously awaiting this book along with you.
Yeah, I never thought I'd write blurbs for other people's work. And Paul asked me to do this, and I was just like, okay, I got to do justice to this book. So I think I put a little children's tale twist to it, if I can remember. And then another blurb that I got asked to write, which was really an honor, was a blurb for Bill Bangan's new book on his 4.7% rule. So I'm a little bit shaken up by the fact that I'm an influencer now. I never thought I'd be an influencer. Jackie's an influencer. Paul and Amanda are influencers with their story, their love story, their financial story, and now their children's story. So we want to thank you today, Paul and Amanda, for joining us on Catching Up to 5. Thank you for doing your first podcast with us. Thank you for the world premiere today of the readings of Once Upon a Fi. Any final words for the late starter audience?
It's never too late.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that.
I can attest to that.
And I don't think we will ever get tired of just saying that. It's never too late. Thank you guys for joining us on Catching Up to 5. So, Bill, as you know, we cannot do this show without our amazing staff and the people that help us put this on. Our social media maven is Diana Falk, and our editor is Fritz Brazard. We love them, and they keep us going.
Yeah, Jackie, I mean, this show wouldn't have the quality it has without our folks, our peeps. And we'd also like to give you a few calls to action for the show. We love our community, and we hope you love us back. If you would like to support the show and our mission to help late starters, you can do that at Buy Me a Coffee, which is a platform that allows you to make a donation. The link is in the show notes and on the website.
Check out the show notes for resources mentioned in today's show. Also, head on over to our website at catchinguptophi.com and check out our vetted resources, partners, and affiliates for discounts and their services, because we love sharing great deals.
Please share the show with others and head on over to our Facebook community to help us grow. If you prefer video, head on over to YouTube and watch the show there. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Catching Up to Phi. We would appreciate it if you could also leave us a 5-star review to help our message reach others.
And while we are financial educators that love to teach, remember that our content is for general education and information purposes only. We are not providing financial, legal, or tax advice. Always do your own research or consult a professional before making important decisions.
So, Jackie, we'll see our audience next time on Catching Up to Phi. Cheers.